My name's Emily Fry. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. Happy Friday. We're so glad that you're joining us today for our webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about supplier management. And just a look at InterCrowd and who we are, if you don't already know us, we deliver HCM, financials, extend, integration, and AMS services. We have over 160 employees globally who carries over 670 certifications in Workday. So to learn more and find this information, you can always visit our website, and there will be some contact information listed at the end of the presentation. Okay, just a little bit about myself. My name's Emily Fry. I'm located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm a Workday financials consultant here at InterCrowd with a focus in procurement and suppliers, as well as customers and customer contracts. So prior to consulting, I actually worked client side at Workday in procurement and suppliers under the global strategic sourcing team. So I'm very excited to be here with you today. So let's just jump right into it. It's no secret that the way we're running our business is ever changing and adapting to a new normal. We've heard it before, we'll hear it again. And while our business is adapting to change, the same can be said about our suppliers. So today we're going to talk about ways to efficiently manage our new and existing suppliers in Workday. Okay, and here is our agenda. We're going to be talking about supplier self-registration, which is actually an external site to help streamline your new supplier activity. And then I'm going to be talking about supplier portal configuration, that is managing your existing suppliers in your tenant. And then we're going to go through a demonstration of both of these and leave time for questions at the end, like Perry said. Okay, so to jump right into it, supplier self-registration and supplier portal, how they are alike, how they are different, and what they do. These aren't brand new features in Workday, but if you are using suppliers in Workday or are interested in using suppliers in Workday, these are two great options and have a lot of capabilities. So supplier self-registration, we'll start there. Like I said, that is an external site that you set up where your suppliers or prospective suppliers can create a login, enter their contact information, attach supporting documentation securely, and specify the goods and services that they provide. So that helps to register your new suppliers. And then you have Supplier Portal. So Supplier Portal is created internally to allow login access for your suppliers to your actual tenant. So basically you give your supplier contacts access to their procurement business documents, the ability to submit their own updates, and it enables them to maintain their own contact information. So one cool thing about both of these too is that you can create requests for quotes in the tenant and make those public on both of these sites or both of these platforms. So that is one cool thing about both of these. We're going to jump into supplier self-registration first. Like I said, this is that external site for your new suppliers and new supplier setup. So the first thing you need to do is create your external supplier site. How you do that is with the task create external supplier site. And basically what you'll do is create a URL for this site. And from here, you can actually configure the landing page. You can configure the home page with instructional text. You can have your logo appear as well, and you can have PDFs that your new suppliers will download. And this is also where you can specify what information you want required when your supplier registers. So stuff like contact information, supplier classification, attachments, stuff like that. Another cool thing that you can do here that maybe you have used before are questionnaires. So you can actually publicize the question, create questionnaires specific to new suppliers and publish them on the external site. And you would do this on this page. And then this is also where you would add those public RFQs that I talked about before. And I'm going to be demonstrating the entire process of registering. So I will show you what it looks like for your users. Okay, this is the user interface, and I'll be getting into this in the tenant in a second. But this is what will appear when you go to that external site. And basically, it has that instructional text that we have set up, and you can see that they can register and view your public bid opportunities. Like I said, they create a login to this external site. This is all that they would have access to, is to register and view those bids. And then when they click register, it'll take them to this page where they will fill out all their business detail and contact information. This is where the questionnaire will appear as well, and then they can attach documents here. So this is cool because once they click submit, it actually routes through the prospective supplier request event business process. And that business process, you can set up whatever works best for your business, but you can route these supplier requests to your supplier team for review and approval. So once that supplier is set up or approved, they will appear in your tenant as a normal supplier, as a supplier would, and then you can start utilizing Supplier Portal if you choose. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about Supplier Portal. So Supplier Portal, like I said before, is giving your supplier contacts access to your actual tenant, where they'll be able to log in and they can submit contact updates, banking updates. They can view procurement documents as well. And let's get into how that works. Okay, so the first step is to assign supplier contacts. So you do this on the supplier account. Note that this is different than just the contact information. You do have to have specific contacts, and you will create your contacts here with their email address. And once you have created the contacts, then you can create a Workday account for these contacts. So this is how you do that, is create Workday account for supplier contact. And basically you give that contact a Workday account to your tenant. For my example, I used the first initial last name dot supplier. Once again, you can use whatever works best for your business, but that is a great way just to differentiate your supplier Workday accounts from your other Workday accounts. And then you set a password for them. You can require a new password at their next sign-in. But basically, this is how you would create that account for them. Okay. And now that their account is created, you will set up what they see when they log into your tenant. So you do that using maintain dashboards, which maybe you've used before. And there are a few main dashboards that you can configure for your supplier portal. And those are invoices and payments, POs and catalogs, and request for quotes dashboards. And basically what you will do is you can configure the content, such as the worklets and reports that appear on these dashboards. You can also set announcements on these dashboards, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like when we get into our demo. And one thing to note, you can set if you want to make them required or not. One thing to note is that the group they're automatically assigned to is supplier contact as self. That is their security group. So as you can see, that is set up on our dashboard. Okay, so this is what your supplier will see. We created their account, we set up our dashboards, and this is what they see when they log into the tenant. So as you can see, we have contact and banking information. That's where they can view their contact and banking information in your tenant, what's listed in your tenant. They can actually request to update that information if they need to. And then we have our invoices and payments dashboard where they can view recent invoices and payments. And And then requests for quotes, like I said earlier, if you have public requests for quotes, they'll be able to see the ones that are public or that are specified to them. And then POs and catalogs, where they can view their open purchase orders. And then if they do have catalogs with you, they can look at the catalog loads or request a catalog load from there. So as you can see, this is very helpful by having them update their information. It kind of takes away that back and forth with your supplier team. And it's a very secure way to do that, to pass along that information, that sensitive information. And then by giving them access to invoice and payments or their POs, they can actually, it kind of eliminates that back and forth with, oh, like, can we get a copy of our invoice, or what's the status of this payment or this PO? It kind of eliminates that back and forth with your supplier or AP teams, which can be extremely helpful, especially while everyone's remote. A lot of things can get lost in translation. So these are the dashboards. And one thing I will note too is that you can set this up however you want. So the supplier, when they log in, has very restricted access basically to just what you allow them to with these dashboards. Say it makes sense if you're interested in Supplier Portal to first roll out like contact and banking information to give them access to that. Maybe that's phase 1 for you. And then you kind of want to test that out with some of your suppliers and then eventually roll into invoices and then payments. You can roll it out like that. Just whatever makes sense for your business and what you want to give them access to. Okay, so now for the fun stuff, let's get into the tenant and show you what that looks like. Okay, so now we have gone to our external supplier registration site. This is what will appear when they go to that site. I already created myself an account. So when I click on home, we'll see that instructional text that I talked about before. You can also have PDFs for them to download. Basically, whatever makes sense for you. You can have the banner and your logo. And then actually we'll start with the bid opportunities. So I've created a public bid for face masks, and this is something that I've made public and that I've also published to this site. So this is something that's completely public. They can view this, view any upcoming, canceled, or closed. As you can see, there's a PDF with instructions that they could download. So this is where they could get that information. If you want to make it public, you don't have to, of course. Let's go back. Okay, and then we're going to actually go through the registration process so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so when they click register, you're gonna notice that this looks very similar to setting up a new supplier. It has that same, like the same information for new supplier setup. And then of course we have this questionnaire that I talked about. So this is something that we created and specified that we want our suppliers to fill out when they do this external registration. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a demo and we'll just walk through the whole thing so you can see kind of what they're needing to do. And then of course, as you know, red asterisk is required, and you can make things required or not required. You can hide things or make things required or public. And then obviously these are not required right now, but you can have questionnaire answers if you don't already know this. Short answers or multiple choice. But that is what that would look like. Gonna go through. Okay, and accepted payment types. And then one thing also to note is that you can upload banking information too with supplier self-registration. We're just gonna do check. And then currencies, we added this note that if you want to accept all currencies, you must select the list of accepted currencies. So we'll just add USD, and our default will be USD. And then contact information. So how we've set this up is if you want to add a primary phone, they can do that. It's not required. You can make that required. And then once you click that, these fields will be required with the phone number. And then email address, you can make that required as well, URL, and then mailing address. It's being funny. Okay. So now we have selected our country, and then you'll see that those address lines appear. And you know what, for this example, we will fill out this information. I always just use Texas because I'm from Texas, so I know that the zip code will validate. And okay, so for the next one, as you can see, you can upload documents here. And then you can have a terms and conditions where they can electronically sign. So you can set that up with whatever you would like, whatever makes sense for you. We're just going to go through the entire process and submit. So as you can see, here are all the details, the summary page. You can add a lot more than just this. You can add, you know, the phone number being required, different things, classifications, bank accounts. But for now, this is what we have configured. And I'm going to go ahead and submit it. Congratulations, that's perfect. That's what we want to see. Okay, and then as you can see, the registration status is now in progress. So if it's approved, it'll say approved, and then, or if it's denied for whatever reason. So this kicked off the business process, prospective supplier requests event business process. So now it's routing to the supplier team to review and approve. Okay, so that's if I'm a new supplier. I can also view my application. But say I have Supplier Portal already, and so I've logged in as my example here. And this is what will appear once I've logged into the tenant, and we have those dashboards that I talked about before. Our contact in banking, where they can view their contact information and say, okay, yep, that looks good, or no. Right now, especially, the contact information might be changing. People are working remote, so maybe there's a better phone number to reach certain people at, different things like that. This kind of helps to have them update that on their own, so then they can create contact information if they needed to. And that looks very similar to the supplier, if you were to do this on the supplier card. I'm not going to go through that one. Okay, so that's an overview of contact in banking. Like I said, you can kind of customize what you want them to see and be able to do on their own. And then invoices and payments, it'll show the most recent invoices, most recent payments, and then you can also run reports to find those. Like I said, this is customizable as well on the dashboard. And then they have very limited access. I think it's just view only, and they can see that information. And then request for quotes. So you can specify suppliers to send your requests for quotes to, and then that would appear here for them. This one is that public one that I made. So it's appearing for everyone, and you can see that it's open and not yet responded. If there was open and we responded, it would be here, and then awarded would be here. And then we can actually create a response from this dashboard. Okay, and then POs and catalogs. Okay, I did configure an announcement on this one, like I was saying in the dashboard. So you can provide instructions or announcements when they click into that dashboard. And then they can view their most recent purchase orders, the status, uninvoiced purchase orders. You can customize this. So if you didn't want this to appear, you could do that. And then the catalog load. So they can create a catalog load request or view their most recent catalog loads if you are using catalogs with your suppliers. Okay, so that is a very broad overview of Supplier Portal and supplier self-registration. Very helpful, especially in this time when supplier information is changing and there's a lot of back and forth between your supplier and AP team. And this kind of helps to reduce that. And yeah, that, 1 second, we'll go back to our presentation. Okay, so that's all I had for that demonstration. And now we want to open it up for any questions that you might have. Feel free to drop them in that Q&A. And yeah.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, like she just said, if you have a question, please use the Q&A at the bottom. Emily, we do have 2 questions that have come through. The first one being, is there a way to see all the supplier setup requests that have come from supplier self-registration?
That is a great question. Okay, so we're asking if there's a way to see all the requests that have come in if you're using self-registration. So there is a report in Workday called Find External Supplier Requests, and that should give you what you're looking for. That will give you a list of all the requests that have come through from supplier self-registration. And that'll actually, I believe, just link directly to the supplier if they have been set up in Workday. And then I believe as well, there's a process history where you can see where it is in the process of being approved through that business process that we talked about earlier. So I would run the report, find external supplier requests, and get a list of all of those. I believe you can filter by dates as well.
Perfect, thank you. And then we have one more question for you. How do you suspend someone's supplier account for the supplier portal?
Great question. So yes, sometimes you will need to suspend accounts, and how you would go through that, I think there's a couple of ways, but the first way to do that is you can go off the related actions of that supplier contact. So the one that I used on the supplier account, you can go off the related actions of that, and I think it's maintain the Workday account or edit the Workday account itself. And then there you have a few options. You can set an expiry date on that account, or you can choose to inactivate it, which I think would answer your question, is just to inactivate it that way. There is another report too that you could run if you were like a security admin, is the All Workday Accounts report. And that will show you a list of all the Workday accounts in your tenant. So like I was saying earlier, with differentiating your supplier accounts with the .supplier after their name, that can help you to quickly see like which ones are suppliers and which ones are like other users. So by using that, you can see which ones are suppliers and then go off of the related actions of their accounts and then do the same, set an expire date or inactivate them. So there's a couple ways to do it, and that can be said for a lot of things in Workday, a couple ways to do it, but those will give you the same results in activating their account.
Perfect. That is all the questions that we had.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, I'm glad we could answer those. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So like I said, my name's Emily Fry. I have my contact information listed here. If you have any questions about this webinar or are interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out. And then we also have Mike Chrisman, who's our Vice President of Business Development, with his contact information here as well. He can help you answer any questions that you have about In a Crowd. If you do want to learn more, he's happy to answer those. One thing I will say real quick is that we do have a supplier management crash course. We have a crash course for really all the modules in Workday. So if you're interested in that and kind of taking a deep dive to suppliers, I would definitely recommend checking that out or asking about that one. But that's all I have today. thank you so much for joining. I hope that this was helpful to you and kind of gave you something new to think about with Workday suppliers. Yeah, thank you so much for joining and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Emily. I'd like to remind everybody that this presentation will be made available. We'll send it in a PDF form so that you have it, and make sure that you have that contact information as well. It's also been recorded, and we'll make that recording available as well. So like Emily said, have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for attending.